Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge. And to then see this negativity, like why? And what should have been done? I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it in Iowa. You see these TV ratings.
It's filling in for me, so I've been looking forward to this all week. Christine Brennan is one of the best sports writers in the country, has been for a long time.
Christine Brennan just exposed the WNBA in a major way. Guys, for this one here, we got to go all the way up to Indy. Let's get it.
The WNBA was recently exposed. A USA Today reporter has revealed shocking information on Caitlin Clark's treatment by the league's commissioner and executives. We are discussing ineptitude, jealousy, and a total inability to see excellence when it is right in front of them. The league's reputation is severely harmed by this revelation. What are your thoughts? Is Caitlin Clark being treated by the WNBA out of pure jealousy or outright incompetence? Please share your opinions in the comments section below.
Came out, what she had to say in this book was going to shake the ground of the WNBA. She's been around for a very long time, and she knows the inner and outer workings of this league. Christine Brennan let it be known in multiple interviews that the WNBA was not ready for a superstar like Caitlin Clark.
This is what transpired. A book that is essentially a nuclear bomb fired on the WNBA headquarters was recently released by seasoned USA Today reporter Christine Brennan, who has been covering women's basketball for longer than most of these players have been alive. And believe me when I say that the league is still feeling the effects of the shock.
The thing I don't get, Christine, is that in the case of Tiger and in the case of Jordan, the other players and the league around them, in Tiger's case, the PGA Tour, realized that a rising tide raises all boats and were incredibly supportive of Tiger and Jordan. With Caitlin, it seems like, for whatever reason, she's polarizing. Like she's been hit with more flagrant fouls than any player ever this year. They tried to come at you when you were writing a story and said, don't ask questions about why people don't like Caitlin Clark. But I'm going to ask you, Christine, why is she polarizing in your opinion? Why do people not embrace the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark?
It's one of the big points in the book. I deal with all of this and my research and reporting, because I was perplexed as well. I mean, this is the greatest moment ever for the WNBA. Yep. We wish it happened sooner. Of course we wish it happened sooner. There were amazing players who, as you know, both you guys know, were toiling in obscurity, the male-dominated mainstream sports media ignoring them.
Brennan didn't write a dull essay on women's empowerment or anything. She went into full investigative journalist mode and revealed the WNBA's lack of preparation, complete ignorance, and outright animosity for their own golden goose. Here, we're referring about Caitlin Clark, the individual who brought this league out of obscurity and into the public.
And been very fortunate to be at Wimbledon's and Super Bowls and Tiger Woods and you name it. I've covered it. And I'm so lucky to have done that. And I found myself fascinated. Like, who is this? And I'm getting text messages from guys who would never have watched a second of women's basketball. Good guys. They want their daughters to play sports. I mean, good people, but just, And they're texting, are you there? I'm watching. Are you seeing this performance? And that told me something that I actually was very helpful to be at home watching it versus being on press row, talking to a bunch of other journalists, that okay, there's something going on in the country here. And it's everyone's fascinated and people are standing in line for hours in the cold around the Big Ten, this barnstorming tour. And it's all about a basketball player who happens to be a woman.
According to the book, Brennan called a senior league official the day after Clark filed for the 2024 WNBA draft. This is when things start to get interesting. Brennan was informed by this person, who obviously lives in a different reality, that Clark's entrance was the league's biggest development since Maya Moore. Maya Moore was gifted, don't get me wrong, but let's be honest. Nobody knew who she was except for ardent basketball enthusiasts. If their lives depended on it, the ordinary population couldn't choose her from a lineup. This is where Brennan's experience truly comes into play, though. It seems that these league officials were unaware of what she knew. That Clark would be unique. Not merely unique, but revolutionary. Brennan saw the tsunami coming as these so-called basketball experts were comparing her to players who hardly made an impact. She was certain that Clark would attract the interest of not only the typical basketball enthusiasts but the entire country. And how was this information used by the league? Nothing at all. The greatest chance in the history of women's basketball was about to present itself to them, and they sat there with their collective rear ends up. When you consider it, the degree of incompetence here is just astounding.
Unauthorized, which is not ominous at all. You want it to be unauthorized because I can tell the truth, unvarnished. Caitlin's quoted throughout the book. She was great answering any question I asked her, but dealing with these important issues. So you've got a 74% black league. We understand this. I mean, I'm white. You know, Ramona, I think you guys are white.
Yeah.
We have no idea what it's like to be black in America. And I say that. Let's be brutally honest here. Here comes a white woman from Iowa, and she's going to be the biggest superstar. Now, absolutely, the spotlight's shining on her. Finally, it's shining on all these other players who deserved it for years but never got it. And that's a wonderful turn of events. But instead of focusing on the positives, sadly, the WNBA players, so many of them, not all.
This is when things become really juicy. Not only does Brennan's book reveal the league's lack of preparation, but it also reveals their total ignorance of the situation. She reported that league management honestly didn't think the WNBA could experience something similar to the Caitlin Clark debacle. They couldn't even fathom the possibility of mainstream success since they were so accustomed to being the overlooked stepchild of professional sports. Take a moment to consider how pitiful that is. Officials from your own league don't think highly of your goods. They shrug their shoulders and carry on as usual when greatness literally declares for your draft because they are so certain of their own insignificance. It's similar like managing a restaurant and being taken aback when customers genuinely want to consume your food. However, things worsen. According to the book, some members of the media were able to predict this from a great distance. During her time in Iowa, Clark was being covered by a few reporters and content producers who were aware of her unique talent and fan base. They realized that when she went professional, her fan base wouldn't simply vanish. However, the league executives inexplicably failed to notice any of this. Here, the figures are accurate. The Indiana Fever drew an average of 4,000 spectators each game in 2023. It's not a typo. 4,000. For comparison, that is less than the majority of Texas high school basketball games. However, supporters were waiting in line outside the arena 2 hours before doors opened when Clark arrived for her first preseason game. A preseason WNBA game takes 2 hours. According to reports, the security personnel were astounded since they had never witnessed anything like that.
And an antagonist. And I've argued that the NBA could use a little bit more of hero and villain to popularize the sport again. The WNBA does not need that because for a lot of America, Caitlin Clark is the hero. And anyone that comes to Caitlin Clark's defense is a hero. And everyone that flagrantly fouls her, speaks poorly of her, acts like she's not great, is the villain, and then vice versa on that. How big of a part of the story is that when you look at the conflict surrounding Caitlin Clark? We got grown men on talking head shows wanting to fight each other over women's basketball and talking about it, right? We've got all these hot takes about all this going on, Christine. How big of a part of the story is that for you, and is that for this book?
I deal with it for sure in the book. And, I think what we've seen is surprising to me. Having covered women's sports as well as men's, for the length of my career, you would have thought that the arrival of this superstar in the WNBA would have been...
And how did the league react to this extraordinary level of interest? Did they bend over it? Did they greet their new star with a red carpet? Did they develop a marketing strategy based on the phenomenon they were dealing with? Not, of course. Rather, they appeared almost irritated by the attention. They seemed to favor their cozy mediocrity above real achievement. The most incriminating aspect of the entire issue is perhaps the envy factor that Brennan reveals. Many in the league, including players, officials, and longtime media members, were clearly unhappy with Clark's instant impact, as the book makes apparent. This second-year player is garnering more attention than seasoned players with years of experience in the league. The arenas are all sold out. The TV ratings have skyrocketed. All of a sudden, women's basketball is the topic of conversation.
And here comes Caitlin Clark, and let's say it, and I say it in the book, I'd go into this in depth. A white woman from Iowa in a 74% Black league. That's an issue. The book is the first real journalistic look at this entire season and at Caitlin Clark and what she's done and all these issues that are out there. No holds barred. I shy away from nothing. And I look at the way players like Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops with her flurry of falsehoods, Cheryl Reeve, the Olympic coach, Gina Auriemma, really tried to minimize her. And were very critical of her. That stunned me. You should be saying, this is great. You don't have to cheer for her. You guard her. You play tough. She's not a victim. She loves to throw it at people. She's feisty and tough out there. And that makes her, I think, even more appealing to so many people. But for this group of people to want to say such negative things and be so wrong about her, okay, fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But what she's doing by going into the WNBA.
However, the reaction was animosity rather than acknowledging that a rising tide lifts all boats and appreciating this windfall. On the floor, players were making cheap shots. Officials were making dubious decisions. Think pieces about how Clark was receiving too much attention were being written by the media. It's similar to witnessing individuals gripe about winning the lottery because they weren't the ones who chose the numbers. The thing that irritates me the most is how predictable everything was. It was obvious to anyone with half a brain that Clark's popularity in college would carry over into the workplace. She wasn't just a passing fad who gained popularity during March Madness. For 4 years in a row, she sold out arenas, broke viewership records, and created real enthusiasm for women's basketball at Iowa. Neon letters were used to write on the wall. However, for some reason, the individuals tasked with expanding and promoting the league failed to notice it. They were unable to see the bigger picture because they were so engrossed in their own tiny world and so certain that things will always be the same. It's widespread professional carelessness. The league's cultural issues that led to this predicament are also revealed in Brennan's book. Some WNBA players seem to believe that popular success somehow undermines the credibility of the league. For example, if too many people start watching, it loses its authenticity. For a professional sports league, this is the most backward mentality you can imagine. The book reveals how Clark was treated throughout her rookie season as a result of this mindset. The league let a culture of animosity flourish rather than safeguarding their investment and showcasing their new star. The players were overtly antagonistic. Coaches were making derogatory remarks. Additionally, the media was reporting on how Clark was receiving preferential treatment since he brought the league previously unheard-of levels of attention and revenue.
So Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge to men's golf. And to then see this negativity, the next question would be, or your viewers and listeners are probably saying, okay, so like why? And what should have been done? And I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it in Iowa. You see these TV ratings. 4 million more, as I said, watching the women than the men. I think it's worth repeating a few times because It is such a stunning statistic, guys.
The way the league handled the marketing opportunities is very shocking. They hardly understood how to take advantage of a guy who is creating more excitement than the league has seen in years. The merchandise was a complete failure. The entire promotional campaign appeared to have been created by individuals who intentionally opposed the product's success, and the timing choices were dubious. It is evident from the text that this was more than ineptitude. It was deliberate ignorance. League officials were given information, proof, and unmistakable signs that they were dealing with something unique. And they decided to disregard it. They were more at ease in their tiny, closed-off environment than they were with the prospect of real development and achievement. And now that Clark is in his second season, the league is still having trouble figuring out how to deal with the phenomena that has been bestowed upon them. When she performs, the TV numbers are still really high. The product continues to fly off the shelves. The arenas remain crowded. Nevertheless, this underlying tension persists. Many people in the league feel that this whole situation should simply end. What may be the most striking example of organizational dysfunction in contemporary sports has come to light because to Brennan's reporting. This league was fighting for both financial viability and relevance, and it was practically dying on the vine. Additionally, They viewed salvation as an annoyance when it emerged as a generational talent with widespread appeal. This book's consequences extend well beyond women's basketball and the WNBA. It serves as an example of how well-established organizations can actively work against their own interests because they are so set in their ways and reluctant to change. The league had every chance to capitalize on the Clark phenomenon and use it as a springboard for long-term success and expansion. Rather, they opted for deliberate ignorance, hatred, and jealousy. The revelation of the league's total misperception of their own circumstances is the most damning aspect of Brennan's expose. They were unable to identify a gift when it was given to them because they were so certain that they were playing a pure, unadulterated form of basketball. They mistook integrity for incompetence and genuineness for irrelevance. The fact that the solution was so easy makes this even more annoying. All they needed to do was welcome their new star, shield her from the evident animosity and jealousy, and ride the success wave she was bringing. Rather, they decided to make it as challenging as possible for all parties. The book also reveals how social media and new media helped identify Clark's potential before more established organizations did. While mainstream media was playing catch-up and league executives were baffled, independent journalists and content producers recognized the writing on the wall. They recognized that Clark's appeal went beyond the typical basketball demographics and that her career would be exceptional. Another recurring topic in Brennan's reporting is this gap between conventional wisdom and the reality of new media. Every facet of the league's handling of the Clark problem demonstrated that they were working with a 1990s mindset in a 2020s reality. They constantly lagged behind in everything from marketing to scheduling to basic public relations. This was more than just a lost chance, as the book makes evident. It was deliberate sabotage. The league had all the resources required to capitalize on the Clark phenomenon and create long-term success around it. Rather than viewing their greatest asset as a solution to be welcomed, they decided to approach it as a problem to be solved. The way this mindset permeated the players and coaches is very annoying. Many decided to see it as a zero-sum game rather than acknowledging that Clark's success benefited everyone in the league. In actuality, the opposite was true, but they believed that her receiving attention somehow meant less for them. All boats are lifted by a rising tide. However, it seems that no one in the WNBA had ever heard that phrase. It's also important to think about the global ramifications of this blunder. The WNBA has an opportunity to establish itself as the unchallenged leader of the global expansion of women's basketball. Clark's appeal extended beyond the country. She was bringing the league to the attention of people throughout the world. However, the league's dysfunction became part of the narrative rather than leveraging that international attention. Let's discuss the particular situations that Brennan's book highlights. It was more than simply competitive basketball when Clark was targeted on the floor. The purpose of the systematic harassment was to make her feel inferior. The evident attempts to intimidate her, the trash talk, the blatant fouls. This was not an isolated incident. This was the basketball court manifestation of the league's culture. And amid all of this, where was the commissioner? Where was the leadership responsible for safeguarding the league's most important asset? According to Brennan's findings, they were either actively facilitating the situation or were totally unaware of it. In any case, the league's leadership structure is severely damaged. According to the book, the league had numerous chances to change its direction. When the targeting became apparent, they could have intervened. They might have created a marketing campaign that elevated other players while honoring Clark. They might have negotiated greater sponsorship agreements, TV partnerships, and more by leveraging her notoriety. Rather, they decided to let things worsen and fester. Brennan's exposure of media coverage is very instructive. Many seasoned reporters became outraged by the entire situation rather than applauding the fact that women's basketball was at last receiving widespread attention. They created articles that questioned whether Clark was truly that remarkable, if she deserved the attention, and whether the league would suffer in any way from the attention. They seemed to be deliberately attempting to murder the golden goose. Let's also discuss the Nike issue that Brennan mentions. This corporation, which had made a commitment to women's athletics, utterly mishandled the Clark marketing opportunity. The product was few, the shoe deal was unimpressive, and the entire promotional plan appeared to have been created by someone who had never heard of marketing. This is just one more instance of how well-established organizations were totally unprepared for the issue they were dealing with. The internal dynamics that were working against Clark from the start are also revealed in the book. Her prominence was perceived by certain league factions as a threat to their own contributions to women's basketball. These individuals made a concerted effort to discredit her, lessen her influence, and make her career transfer as challenging as they could. The fact that these same individuals are now attempting to claim credit for the league's growing prominence is especially disturbing. They complained about the attention Clark was receiving during her rookie season, but now they are all over social media praising the fact that women's basketball is at last receiving recognition. The hypocrisy is astounding. The financial ramifications of the league's poor management are also shown in Brennan's book. Every player, coach, and staff in the league benefited financially from the higher TV ratings, sold-out venues, and merchandise sales. However, many members of the organization were resentful of the source rather than appreciative of this windfall. The generational gap inside the league is also revealed in the book. Younger people were more willing to accept the Clark phenomena, while older players, coaches, and officials appear to be especially opposed to it. It's just another illustration of how long-standing organizations may solidify and become unresponsive to change. That's it. The WNBA's utter inability to manage their greatest chance in franchise history. Everything we suspected about the league's ineptitude and jealousy is revealed in Christine Brennan's book. Please hit the like button and subscribe for more incisive sports analysis if you found this analysis useful. What additional WNBA disputes ought to be discussed next? Tell me in the comments section below.